Hi, my name is Robin Wong and I want to share 5 autofocus tips on using Olympus cameras. These tips that I'm sharing are basic features found in most Olympus OM-D cameras. I'm sharing them based on my own experience using Olympus OM-D cameras, and I hope that you can get every single photograph in focus after this video. I'm sharing only single autofocus techniques, nothing to do with continuous autofocus or manual focus. These are just basic tips to allow you to get in-focus photograph again and again using your Olympus OM-D cameras. Tip number 1, use cluster autofocus. Cluster autofocus is very helpful in the situation where we cannot predict where the position of the subject will be, especially when the subject is moving. The cluster autofocus will surround itself on the subject that is in constant motion without you having to place the focusing point to follow the subject. I find this very useful when shooting sports or generally any subject that is moving in an unpredictable manner. Bear in mind that currently cluster autofocus is only available in 3 Olympus camera bodies: the EM10 Mark III, the EM1 Mark II, and the EM1X. Furthermore, the cluster autofocus in EM10 Mark III doesn't work in continuous autofocus and tracking. It only works in single autofocus. Typically, we move the focusing point around to the exact area where you want to focus so that autofocus can be performed. Now, to enable the cluster focus, turn the front dial until we get all focusing points activated at once. And when this happens, as you can see, now you can see that the cluster autofocus is activated. Now, when we have a random subject at random locations on the screen, the camera will automatically find the subject, and the cluster autofocus is quite intelligent to find out where the subject is and perform the autofocus. Of course, it's not 100% fail-proof, but I find it to be very, very effective. Now, in real life situation, when there is a moving subject, as long as it is not too fast and you allow the camera some time to catch on to the subject, it can actually predict where the movement is, and when the single autofocus is locked, it is quite accurate. Tip number 2, use autofocus area target pad. Olympus introduced a feature in their camera where it allows you to trace your finger around the LCD screen while shooting through the viewfinder. Tracing your finger will move the focusing point to the exact location where you want it to be, as if you are using a tracking pad or a mouse pad. I find this much easier and quicker to navigate the focusing point around in comparison to using the up, down, left, right arrow keypads. To enable this feature, press Menu, go to Cogs, and AF Targeting Pad, turn it on. Some OM-D cameras may have this in a different location. Now, once this feature is activated, when you shoot through the electronic viewfinder, just trace your finger on the LCD screen, which is turned off. You don't see anything on the LCD screen, but as you trace your finger around it, you can move the focusing point while shooting through the EVF. Tip number 3, use smaller autofocus target area. I've mentioned this tip in one of my previous videos. I'm going to say it again in this video because using a much smaller autofocus point will allow higher precision when it comes to autofocus. If you're using EM10 Mark III or EPL9, press the left button to activate the AF selection screen. If you are using any other Olympus cameras, just use any one of the up, down, left, right button. Turn the front dial and select the smallest focusing area. Tip number 4, using the touch autofocus settings. The LCD screen is a touch screen. We can use the touch to control the focusing point by moving it around, or we can use the touch shutter to touch on the LCD screen and activate the shutter button immediately. Now, to control the touch screen, press this icon here at the bottom left. This icon indicator will actually tell you what mode you are in. Now, this particular mode allows you to use the touch shutter, meaning that when you touch the LCD screen, the image will immediately be captured. Now, you have to be very careful to select the focusing point exactly where you want it to be. Now, when the icon turns white, the touchscreen is turned off. This helps when you don't want accidental presses or the images to be accidentally taken. Now, this last mode allows you to choose the focusing point before you press the shutter button. You can actually choose the size of the focusing area by the slider at the side, and this is different from the first mode where the image is immediately captured. Tip number 5. Autofocus in tricky situations such as low contrast or dim lighting conditions. Now when we place the autofocus point on a flat looking subject with no contrast, no lines, no texture, no information whatsoever for the camera's autofocus to work, the camera cannot effectively pinpoint the autofocus on that particular subject. Now here are some tips that I can share with you how to focus in such tricky situations. Find a line or texture or a difference between bright and dark or some color information on the subject. For example, if you want to autofocus on me, if you put a focusing point on my red shirt, because this is a smooth surface with no line and texture, if you are too far away, the camera may not be able to lock on focus on my shirt because it's just too flat. But if you put a focusing point on my face, on my eye, or on my hair, then it's much easier for the camera to work. Same situation applies when you shoot against the sky. Now if you're shooting a landscape at night against a dark sky, instead of putting the autofocus point on the sky and have the camera struggling, why don't you put the autofocus point on a building or a mountain or a tree or something? Just give the camera something to work with. And you know what? It is not just about the dark sky. Even during the daytime, if there are no clouds and if it's a perfectly blue sky, you put your autofocus point there and the camera will struggle to find the autofocus. Just help the camera out. You are the photographer. You have to work with the camera hand in hand to achieve great results. Let's try to shoot the sky, having the focusing point there. The camera will not lock focus because there is not enough details in the sky. Now, as we move the focusing point away from the sky onto the building, you see that the focusing is quite easily performed. Just find an area with enough details, either lines or texture, and the autofocus will work. Now, that's all the tips I have to share for today using single autofocus on Olympus OM-D cameras. I'm sure some of these tips will help you to achieve pinpoint accurate sharp images. Just to be sure, please check your images and review them. Zoom in to 100% preview just to ensure that you get the critically sharp in focus images shot after shot. Now, if you have found these tips useful, please give this video a thumbs up. And if you have more tips to share on using autofocus in Olympus OM-D cameras, I would love to hear from you. Please leave them in the comments below. I will definitely see you again in the next video. Until then, please go out and take more photographs. Bye-bye.